Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another video. This time we're going to talk about cookies, and more specifically cookies using the ambiorix web framework. If you know everything about cookies, then I doubt you'll learn anything in this video, but if you do not, even if you don't use cookies yourself, it may be of interest, because what we're going to do here applies not just to the ambiorix web framework, but many others as well. As it's good to know we all use cookies one way or another. So let's get started. Let me share my screen like so. The way we're going to work is I'm not going to start from an app from scratch. There is an ambiorix generator that I have here on the left that allows you to create applications. So there's a function called create package that will create an ambiorix app in the form of a package, a bit like a golem for ambiorix. But there is also a CLI which wraps around this package and ambiorix to install, to create those projects easier. With more ease from the command line, as well as start apps, etc. So I'm going to use this. We're going to create package. I'm just going to call it app. And now it's created. So now if I go to app, that's opened again on a different screen, and we bring that across here. Now what you see is essentially a package, and we have app.r that loads the app, loads the package in memory, calls ambiorix, and then runs the app. So runs this function build. Let's take a look at it quick, and essentially that's what you might have seen, what might have been. Hopefully you've tried ambiorix itself, but this is your application, and it returns the app object, which is what we call here, we just call start method on it. So let's see what that does. Again, I'm going to use the CLI. You can just run that script if you want, but if you use the CLI start, you should get the app running. And it contains just a basic app with 3 pages. Here on the home page, we can use the WebSocket to send a message. We're not going to look into that. We have an about page that's just very bland. And we have a contact page in which the user can enter their name and a message. The way this is structured is here the contact pages over here have contact get, which is which runs when we get a get request, which is here. It just returns the template of contact.html page. And we have contact post, which handles the post, which is, why is this so small? Which is here. That's the form it sends to contact. Encodes multi-part form data method post. So it's going to post to the app, contact endpoint here, and we run contact post, which is here. So it encodes everything multi-part. We parse that, we get it, and then after the user has sent a message, which simply print the data that we got from the form, and we return thanks, your name, the name of the person your message was sent. Bit of a lie, we don't send a message, but if I type John's message is hello, submit. I see it printed here. It was print body, we printed it here. It's a simple named list, and then we do thanks John, your message was sent. So now what I want to do here, now that John has sent this this message, I want to keep track of John within this session, so that John, after when he goes to other pages, I can keep track that John already sent a message. This is John using the application. The way we're going to go about this is with cookies, but before we do cookies, let's think for a minute of how we could go about this. You could think, I don't know why I need any fancy technology. I can just have a user variable, which is going to default to unknown. And then here, when the user has sent a message, I can just use user and set it to sorry, to the name that was sent. Then to check that this works, even though I'm telling you this is not how to go about it, what we're going to do is we're going to go to the about page, and instead of putting about us, we're going to use sendf again, which was printf under the root, print format, and we're just going to do about user. So what happens if I run the app? Now, if I go to about, I should see unknown because the user wasn't set yet, right? Unknown, fine. And if I go here, and now I am Jane, I don't even think I need a message. Yeah, thanks Jane, your message was sent. Now Jane goes back to about page, and you see about Jane. So you think that works. But there's numerous reasons why that doesn't work. Well, first, I stop the server and start it again. Back here, I go to about, I've totally lost track of Jane, even though obviously it's the same client, the same browser accessing it. Second, remember you're gonna have hopefully multiple clients, multiple users coming to your app, but you only have one server. Generally depends on how you're gonna deploy that, but in any event, you can't track it like this here because we set it to Jane and then another user comes and sets it to something else, and it's gonna be a mess. The solution here is to use cookies. And thankfully, they're actually very easy to use. The way we're going to do this is on the response. So once the user has filled in the form, we receive the form, and we're going to set a cookie. And the cookie, we attach it to the response. So again, just to recap real quick, the request is what comes from the client, and the response is what we send back. On what we send back, we attach a cookie. I'm just going to give it the name. First argument, the name is just going to be user. And then we're going to have the value is going to be body name. So that way we should be keeping track of the user. This is going to break what I have in the about page here. So I'm just going to undo this. And I think what we're going to do instead, quick digression, is we're going to use a middleware. So that every request, because normally now that if I send back a cookie, the idea is that every subsequent request that comes from the server has this cookie. And an easy way to check that is with set middleware. And a middleware is very simple. It's essentially a handler, just like you do for any kind of route that you listen to. So if you go back to contact gets a request response object, contact post request response object. Our middleware is going to do the same, except it's just going to print the cookie, and it's not cookie like so, and it's not going to return anything. And whereas those handlers are on specific routes and methods, the middleware, which I'm going to place here, it doesn't. The middleware works on every route. So here I'm going to run that function middleware. Again, no brackets, I'm not calling the function, I'm just passing. So now, when I visit this URL, it should print the cookies. And currently, it's an empty list, right? We currently don't have any cookies. If I go to about, well, I left the %s, but it still works. It still prints an empty list. But if I go to contact, my name this time is going to be Bob. Hello, submit. We see the message being printed. And if I go back to the home page, and now it's not printed an empty list, it's printed a named list, user Bob, which we've just set. If I go back to about, same thing, go back to contact, it prints it again. So every request is going to print. That's the job of the middleware that we have here. But what's of interest is really the cookie. Now by default, those cookies can be accessible from JavaScript. It can be useful depending on what you build. You may want the you may want to be able to access whatever it is that you're storing in a cookie from JavaScript. However, by default, ambiorix doesn't. It only makes that an HTTP only cookie. We can change that. That's why when I go to document cookie, is that big enough? I mean, make it even bigger. Document cookie, I see an empty string. So what we can do, we're gonna change it. There's this simple argument, HTTP only equals false. So default be true to make that an HTTP only cookie. Now, run this again. Again, if I look at the cookie, it's still gonna be an empty string because the cookie that I have currently in my browser was set previously as an HTTP only cookie. So we're gonna change that. This time I'm Mary, hello, thanks Mary, message was sent. And now if I go back here, it prints over here user Mary, and if I go to document cookie, now I can see the cookie string. And that poses a problem, right? Because now if you do stuff like that, Mary is a bit of a cheeky. Mary is gonna try and hijack the session, because now I want to use John's session, just like that. And now if I go to the about page, you see on the server it's printed user John. So that makes the cookie rather insecure, right? Because now the cookie is indeed John. So anyone can, if you use that for authentication or whatever it is, people can easily hijack their session. So what can you do about it? There is, and I must say I forgot to mention that earlier, this will require the development version of ambiorix. I've worked quite a bit on the cookies to improve stuff. And this is very easy. That's the cities package, which is essentially a middleware that's going to sign and unsign your cookies for you. It's very easy to use. We just need to add this middleware. So, let us do that. But you know what? Before I do this, and you can remove the cookies from the server. You handle all of that yourself. But here what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear the cookies inside data, so that now I refresh, I see an empty list back again. Right, I'm not going to install the package because I have it, but what we can do is in build, we're going to do, as before, app use this, and we pass it a secret, and the secret is going to be used to essentially hash the cookie, and so that we can make sure it's not being tampered with. The secret here, I'm putting a simple secret string. Obviously you'd use an environment variable or something. You wouldn't put this like that in the code, but that will allow you to keep track to create those hashes. So we'll just rerun the app now that we've added this, and see whatever difference there may be. So if I go to contact again, I've removed the cookies, so it's gone now. So let's take Mary again. I only know about 4 names by the looks of this. Submitted a message that's being printed. We go back here, user Mary. So by the looks of it, nothing changed, right? But if we look at the actual cookie, it's changed much. So what cities does is it keeps the original value is still visible. Keep that in mind. But what it's going to do with the dot, it's going to attach a hash of the cookie. The hash is being made with the secret and then being base64 encoded. And so when the cookie comes back to the request, we can compare. We can essentially take this value, rehash it with our secret, base64 encoded, and compare with this value. If it doesn't match, there must be a problem. So again, let's say I'm gonna message document cookie gonna be equals to this, but Mary thinks she can hijack John's session, and she does this. Let's refresh that. And now we see user character 0. That's what's returned if essentially, for whatever reason, the hash cookie doesn't match what we had originally sent. So the user cannot really hijack your cookie unless they know about unless they know the secret, the algorithm you use. That would be easy to guess, but the secret would not be, hopefully. So yeah, that's how you'd go about protecting the cookie. And then another thing I want to talk about, another reason for using this sort of things, is that then when you scale your application, the cookie is really on the client. Always keep that in mind. You're gonna have, sorry about that, you're gonna have multiple clients, hopefully multiple users concurrently coming to your application, but you only have one server. So there's a slight twist to this that we can do with this load balancer, which probably you would use. Maybe not this one if you don't want to use it. But this is Belgic. It's a load balancer for that I've built for ambiorix. So we can install it. If you have Go, you just install it like this. This is not going to run anything, I think, because I've already got it installed. If you have Go, you can just install it like that. Otherwise, there are binaries. This is Linux for Mac or Windows. You've got it that easy. So how does it work? Well, it's a command line application again, so Belgic, and then we can use the href to see the help. There's only a handful of commands, sorry. You can generate the completion, the auto-completion script. The config, it's going to take a config file, and then we can simply have a start command to start everything. So what I want to do here is create a config file, and you can again take a look at the help, but what we want to do is with the p flag is pass the directory in which we want the config file to be created. I put a dot because I wanted to place it in this current directory, and it created a JSON app. So the path is the path where the application that I want to run is, which is my current path. So I'm just gonna copy this, put it in here. We're gonna run it on port 8080. You can change that and put it on port 3000. And background, that's where I have to explain a bit more about what the load balancer essentially does. If you deploy the app like that with just our script, you're gonna have one app, one server, and then all the traffic is gonna come to it. So you have one R session, one R process that has to handle all the traffic. However, so what we can do is essentially what Belgic does is it runs a number of apps in the background. And then when people go to port that we define here, 3000 in our case, when people come to port 3000, it's going to redirect them to different apps that run in the background. So we choose how many we run in the background. Max by default is going to take the number of free cores you have available on the machine, though that by no means mean that each of these apps are going to run on different cores. That for the operating system to define, we don't get to choose that, but at least you have different out processes in the background. We're going to shorten it. I'm going to make it 5. We're going to run 5 apps in the background, and when people come to port 3000, they're going to be rerouted to any of these 5. Attempts is, well, if one of these apps in the background dies for whatever reason, how many times it attempts to revive the app. Once you've done that, you need one last thing. It's an environment variable, Belgic config, to point to your config file, which is here in my case. So that I've done already because I don't want to open my bash profile and everything with all my other secrets in there. But once we've done that, we can simply run Belgic start. And I go to port 3000 and I see the app. Let me make this bigger, but we can see, I just opened the app a single time, right? But we see that it's running in 5 child processes, which is what I've defined here, 5 background jobs. The first get on the first /1 to one of the apps. This is the port it runs on. On this page, I have static styles, the style.css file, which also needs to be fetched, but that was fetched from another app. ambiorix.js was fetched from another app, etc. So it keeps going round and round, and if I refresh that once, you'll see that it goes around and it makes it the request of different applications, and that makes things scale a lot better. And the reason I'm showing you this here is not only because I think it's, well, very useful, but also because let's go back here and we're going to remove the cookie. Well, before I remove the cookie, it's going to make too much work for, yeah, so let's refresh this. No, let's do this. I'm going to go to the about page and we're going to make it again. We're going to print the user. Right, and the user is, what is the user? The user is from cookie, we take the user if the length of user is equal to 0, we're gonna put someone mysterious, like so. So now if I'm going to clear the cookies to make sure we don't get anything wrong. And if I go to about, I don't have a cookie, I see that it's someone mysterious. But if I go to contact, again, Jane says hello, submit. Then I go to about, I know it's Jane. And if I refresh, the cookie is set on the client. So wherever it goes to whatever app that runs in the background, it's always going to see that it's Jane. But let's go back to, well, what I said we shouldn't do. We're going to keep this like that, and in contact, we're not going to use the user, the cookie, we're going to use user, it's unknown user, and then here we're going to say user to body name. And I've started the server again. We go back to port 3000, and if we go to about, we see that it's an unknown user. If I go here, this time I'm gonna be Bob, below, submit. And if I go to about, it's an unknown user, because the load balancer redirects to different applications. So this user variable that we've set as the name that was passed from the form is actually set in one of these apps, but we've got 4 others running in the background where this is not set. So if I keep refreshing, eventually I'm going to find the one app where I have set the user to Bob there. If I refresh again, it's gone. So that's another thing, another reason why you'd use cookies, and you don't store stuff locally in the app. And if you want to use the load balancer at least in the future. I think that pretty much covers it. And make sure you keep the cookies secure, and remember that the values that you set are still visible. So you set some sort of hash, some sort of ID, something the user can't really guess either. But I think that covers quite a bit of how interesting those cookies are and how useful they may be. Cheers.